The big question that we don't know, and this gets back to the disease curve and whether we remain as pragmatic as we are today. What is the viability of many small and medium businesses? What is the viability of restaurants? What is the viability of industries that are supported totally by tourism? What is the viability of convention centers for business conventions? So there are many parts of the economy that are not going to come back the way we know it. What is the viability of big department stores? Because we all have learned now to shop even more on the internet. Do we go back to going to department stores, or we just remain in purchasing everything we can on the internet? These are all unanswered questions, and these questions are going to be answered over the next 2 to 3 months. But the big issue today is, are we going to see that rebound in small and medium businesses? If we don't, and it takes longer and there's more defaults and delinquencies, then I would argue the capital markets are probably ahead of themselves. And we'll find out. We'll know in about 3 months.
Right. Is it maybe harder to try and predict the next couple of months, the fact that we don't have any precedent in recent decades?
We know that governments, monetary policy and fiscal policies are doing everything they can to stabilize and to lift markets. We also know at BlackRock, in talking to all our clients worldwide, there's an unprecedented amount of liquidity in so many companies' balance sheets now. Most investors are underinvested because they thought the market would fall more. And the amount of money that's sitting in money market funds has never been greater. So there's a tremendous pool of money that needs to be invested. So that's the other issue. That's why we've seen this tremendous rally. And yet even today, when I talk to leaders of insurance companies and leaders of large pension funds, they're sitting with major pools of cash and liquidity. And they want to put that money to work, but the market's ahead of themselves. They don't see much value in owning 10-year treasuries when they're at sub 1%. And in many countries, they're negative yields. And so what is the value of owning a government bond? So instead of doing that, I'll just keep my money in cash. So much of that has to do with your alternatives are worse than cash. And so it's very hard to make a determination where the markets will be in a month or 3 months. I will say with certainty, though, if the disease infection rate grows and grows and grows, and with that we see growing mortality, then we're going to see another rollback in the economies. And if we see a rollback in the economies, then the small and medium businesses are in very big trouble.
Yeah. Now, moving on to sustainability, right? In your annual letter to CEOs this year, which is a must-read for anyone involved in or interested in finance, right? You talked about this fundamental reshaping of finance in the world, and you pledged to make sustainability key within BlackRock, right? So can you explain to us a little bit more about this pledge and why now, what drove you to it?
Well, let me start off and say I am an environmentalist. I was on environmental boards, not-for-profit boards, but I did not write the letter as an environmentalist. I wrote it as a capitalist. And so it is my view that through conversations with our clients worldwide, that more and more clients in all parts of the world, from Latin America to North America, to Europe, to parts of Asia, that more and more of our clients were asking the question about how should they think about climate change in their portfolio. And it became very clear to me, with better science, better technology, with better transparency at company levels, it was very clear for me to say, and this is the important sentence I wrote in the letter, climate risk is investment risk. And if you don't start focusing on that, you're going to have some serious problems in your portfolio. And our pledge was that we are going to supply to our clients more and more data. We're going to provide better analytics to help clients understand the physical impact of climate change and how it may impact a company, a region, a city. And indeed, since I wrote the letter, we've seen record inflows in sustainable ETFs. Since I wrote the letter, we are seeing a record amount of client interaction related to sustainability. And I am pleased to say in the first 6 months of this year, sustainable products in almost 80% of all the products outperformed traditional indexes. And so we believe the fundamental issue around climate change is going to become larger and larger. And people are going to start recognizing that that is investment risk. I also believe the pandemic and COVID is an existential risk to our lives, to our health. And I can speak loudly about the younger generation who are entering the workforce now more than ever. They are seeing how COVID impacts their job. They're going to be going through training programs remotely. These are the same young people who are early teenagers when we had the Great Recession. They think differently than what I did when I joined the workforce. And what we are hearing from more and more young people, the existential risk of COVID is exactly the same existential risk of climate change. Now, COVID is more immediate. Climate change is evolving, but we're seeing evidence of physical climate change impact in parts of the world every day. We're seeing more droughts. We're seeing disruption in crops because we're seeing a warming trend earlier. We're seeing more flooding. We're seeing much greater storm damage from thunderstorms to obviously windstorms, typhoons, hurricanes, tornadoes. And so what in my letter, I also asked every company to begin to report using SASB, which will help us elevate our understanding how each company is going to perform, but not just for environmental issues, the E, but now more importantly in the United States, the S, or social, especially now with greater evidence of still racial inequality. I believe ESG is going to become even more dominant. And it's going to be not just sustainability, but how will companies evolve? How do companies transcend themselves to become much more socially engaged? How are companies becoming more Brazilian when they work in Brazil? How do companies who work in the United States become more American? How do companies who work in Japan become more Japanese and Italian in Italy? And so I do believe the whole elevation of ESG, not just sustainability, but now S is going to become a more dominant conversation.